Hey guys, last year was a wild year for censorship for hunters and anglers. We've partnered with the social media platform GoWild to combat mainstream social media censorship. GoWild was built by outdoorsmen and women just like you. GoWild is a free social community. Not only are your photos not censored, they're encouraged on GoWild. GoWild gives you points for things like sharing your trophies, gear reviews, and inviting friends. As you're in points, you unlock awesome rewards too, such as gift cards, free swags, knives, huge discounts on brands like Garmin, Vortex, and so much more. Oh, and if you're creating a free account, you unlock $10 just for trying it. Visit and download GoWild.com to get started. Use the promo code BRB for an additional 10% off your order. Thanks, guys. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 21 of the Blue River Bow Hunting Podcast. I have a really cool episode lined up this week. You know how I am, guys. I like to have the regular guys on to share their stories and their success stories and everything. This is like top of all those. Like if you are to pay attention to any podcast that I do on just regular guys that don't get enough attention, this is the one to pay attention to because this guy is a big buck killer from Michigan. Jake Bollinger, what's up, man?
Hey, man, I appreciate that. No, glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
No, I heard you on Adam Bowles Hunt the Wild podcast, and I was like, I have got to get this guy on. We have a lot of similarities doing stuff, journaling, stuff like that. You got some big bucks on the wall. I want you to tell everybody, kind of the stuff that you throw in for all this to happen for you.
Yeah, I think it starts really with my attention to detail. I think that's kind of something that I hang my hat on as being super detailed in everything that I do, to a fault at times. You know what I mean? Maybe get a
Right.
little too worked up in it, but that's I like to take everything to the extreme. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right and figure it out. And don't get me wrong, I fail, but I learn from those failures, and just try to do whatever I can to make those favors in my favor, or those odds in my favor. Excuse me.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the reasons why I like doing this podcast. I like to tell you how I failed or how I succeeded and what I did for that to pan out either way. And I think this will be a really cool episode. But first, give a little bit of background on yourself. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
37 years old, wife, two kids. Just recently, a couple years ago, purchased our own farm to add on to the family farm, which was a huge life-changing event. And getting a farmhouse and having to gut that and redo all that stuff. I'm sitting in my man cave right now. I got a few mounts in, a few of my Euro mounts in. Other than that, just working on the farm, 24/7, engulfed in deer hunting. Always listen to podcasts and stuff like that. Your homegrown shows like you and Adam Bowles. I found those. I really like that. That's kind of who I am too. I like to see the common guys out there. So that's what gravitated me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's always those names that jump out to you when you see them on somebody's show or on a lot of the bigger shows and stuff like that. But there is a lot of guys, regular guys, just like me and you, that can do it just as well, if not
Oh
better, than
yeah.
those people. And they get overlooked. And when I was listening to you on Adam's show, the stuff that you were talking about, I was like, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. He pays attention to detail, like you said. That's something I like to do too. And then when you're talking about the journaling, I was like, oh, I got to get him on because I do that myself in pretty graphic detail, like you were talking about. And I think it's gonna be a good episode, man. So, how'd you get started into deer hunting?
My older brother. My dad hunted a little bit, but not a ton, and my older brother got into it and just got me hooked. We played deer and hunter in the living room. I ran around like the buck, and he'd shoot me and gut me and pretend all that good stuff, and it just got me into hunting. Of course, roots started with fishing. Just out in the farm ponds and stuff like that, messing around fishing, always being outside. But my first hunting was deer. I didn't, take the small game route or anything like that. 12 years old is the first time you can bow hunt in Michigan alone. So my brother would basically set me up with a bear compound bow and said, "Here you go." And unfortunately now I'm addicted and stuck. It's not going away. So
No, them roots run deep. You talked about deer hunting being your first thing that you really got into, and not really getting into the small game at a younger age. I kind of had the same upbringing. My dad and uncle took me deer hunting, and at first, I'm not gonna lie, at first I didn't really like it. I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't like it. And then they said, "Well, you bring a video camera and film us." I'm like, "That's cool, man." I was kind of into the electronics thing way back in the day, and I was like, "Yeah, let me film you." So I went out there, and I think it was the reason why I didn't like it before is I had been on a couple hunts, super cold, didn't see anything, sat there. I was like, "Yeah, this
Mhm.
isn't for me."
Yep.
And then I went and filmed them, and saw 15 plus deer in a day, and I was hooked. Like when I say hooked, like a crackhead or something. You know what I mean? You know how bad it gets. But
Yep.
I actually killed my first turkey before I killed my first deer, which is
Nice.
a lot of people say that's crazy. Normally they get that the deer before they get that turkey, but it's fun, man. It's fun talking about the old days. Did you guys have like a deer camp every year?
Yep. Yeah, that's actually what kind of got me down this path of recording and journaling. We had a opening day, we had an awesome butcher shop where everybody would take their deer to. We'd hang up, deer. We had a cooler, all the machinery to take care of it. We processed everything ourselves, along with other animals. So that's why we had it, for butchering ourselves, and it just turned into definitely in every single year the night before, everybody came over and we all hung out and shot the crap and got stories out and looking at books. And then of course opening day, everybody got together super early in the morning, had an awesome breakfast, talked deer hunts, went out, everybody, the anticipation's high, have a good morning and come back in and do it all over again for the afternoon. So yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
definitely a tradition around our place. 20, 30 people come over.
you know, um, Here lately on the podcast, when I've had people on, I like to bring up like tradition in the state that they hunt in. Talk a little bit about like Michigan tradition when it comes to deer hunting and just why you love hunting Michigan.
Yeah, obviously I just love it because this is where I'm from. This is what I know. I've actually never been a travel hunter. I've not hunted out of state yet. Got a couple of those in mind, but just it is a huge tradition. Like a few of your other guests and some other people say, our opening day of gun season, November 15th every year, is a national holiday for us. It should be every school should be canceled. Some schools actually did shut down for the day. But it was one of those that you knew you weren't going to school that day because you were going out to the deer woods, and it was pretty darn exciting. But truthfully, I always liked bow hunting more. That drew me quick. I like going out in the gun with my grandpa, sitting in the blind with him. That was a ton of fun, but it was just bow got me, and it still got me. You know.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's that time, that certain window, man. Like the pre-rut chase going on, leading into the rut, which obviously is gun season. It's just got a different feel to it, man. For some reason, I get hooked a lot on those afternoon sets, pre-rut, late October. You're already warm up in there, and it's starting to get cold. Maybe the wind's blowing a little bit. Just that feeling you get, and you can tell sometimes when it's about to go down because you can just everything leading up into it.
Yep.
Like you said, journaling. The weather, barometric pressure, everything leading into what is about to happen, and then it happening while you're there is even better.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the land that you're hunting up there, you hunting on private or public? Obviously, you got a farm, so you're probably hunting that pretty hard.
Yeah, yep. Private. Started off on my family's farm, hunting that, but with my two older brothers. Um, got into the QDMA early, when not a lot of people in Michigan were doing that. It was, of course, some people were, shooting bigger deer and stuff, but it wasn't a big thing. Whereas we turned it into a pretty top priority for us pretty early in the game. And then my brother shot some really nice one, 200 inch, 21 point in Michigan, just a
Wow.
behemoth of a buck. Yeah, just a giant. And that set us on the course of really getting into this, getting into it pretty good, trying to make little small food plots and stuff like that, before it was ever even on, the big shows and stuff. We were kind of messing around with that, dabbling with it, luckily around the agricultural land. But now I'm on the in-laws farm and my own farm.
That's
So, like I
awesome.
said, we purchased our own farm a couple years ago and added it to. So that was a big chunk. And I actually was lucky enough that this farm is funny enough. When I first started hunting the in-laws, I said, if I can ever buy that farm, I will sell my left leg. I will do whatever I need to do to get that ground. And it just, I can't believe it worked out. And I'm still on cloud nine thinking about it, just because of, I now locked up that core bedding, that key piece of bedding that I've been hunting around for so many years. And it's, it's all 95% tillable. Not a
Right.
ton of true hunting ground that, most people think of, big blocks of woods and stuff. But yeah, very fortunate to have some really nice private ground to hunt on.
That's awesome. You talk about that. I want to hear some of this about this 200-inch deer. So, where does it line up like all time in Michigan somewhere? Because I can't imagine there's that many 200-inch deer killed in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, no, for a while it was number 4. I don't know exactly where it sits currently, but it was number 4, non-typical in Michigan. That's Boone and Crockett scored, officially scored and everything. It was
Right.
1998. Yeah, so it was just a beast. And to kick that whole story off, I remember this like crazy. I was wrestling, and I remember my brother, calling me before my wrestling practice and saying, "Hey, I want to go to the small pond stand. You mind if I go?" And I'm like, "It's Friday night. I don't care. I can't get there. I'm wrestling." And I'll be a son of a gun if 2 hours later, he's calling me and he's like, "You got to get over here. You got to get over here." And of course, that was before I could drive. And Mom, supposedly Donnie shot a giant. I'm going to see it. And I walked up and it was like, even then I didn't know what I
Yeah.
was looking at, but it just unbelievable, just crazy.
That's a once in a lifetime buck. I mean,
Yeah,
these people obviously have deer management systems in place and a lot of outfitters and stuff like that. But still, to get over that, 200-inch hump, I mean, that's a hell of an accomplishment. I mean,
absolutely.
did you have pictures or anything like that back in the day,
Oh
knowing
yeah.
he was there?
Oh no, no. Oh, the deer? No, only
Yeah.
that a couple of neighbors. Actually, one of the neighbors, kept saying he was seeing a big one, but at that time, a big one was just, a good 148 10 point. That was a good one.
Right.
And so we just chalked it up to that. Nobody really knew, other than a couple of people, that true monarch was out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother was only like 18 or 19 when he shot that thing. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So, and just 10 ringed it too with compound. It was like, just, I don't know how he held it together, but he did, just
No
10
kidding.
ring.
I don't. I mean, I'm almost 33, and I don't know if I could hold it together on a 200 incher with my bow. I mean, that's
Uh-huh.
I've had my biggest deer is like a 137, so it's not like I'm killing that kind of caliber deer, but even shooting a 137 will get me jacked up.
Better. Damn right. Yeah.
And that's why we do it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So sticking to the Michigan a little bit, I've heard people talk about like a migration when it comes to Michigan deer hunting. Is that anything that like happens where you're at, or what do you think about that?
I'm not going to necessarily call it a migration where I'm from, because I'm in southern Lower Peninsula. In the UP, that's 100%. From the studies, they've showed that, at least from what I have read or whatever, that there is a migration to summer and winter grounds. It's a migration of sorts. You know what I mean? Not like
Mm-hmm.
what you think of with African animals and
Right.
Alaskan animals and stuff, but still a long enough distance. And I 100% believe in my area there is summer and wintering grounds. It just, the deer totally change. And I, like, almost from all the years of trail cameras, know that switch of that week where things are going to just go whoop. And some of the deer that I've been seeing stick around, some of them do not. And I don't know where some of them even end up. And I know pretty much everybody around me. So of course, some of them are going to be tight-lipped and not tell you what they're seeing. But for the most part, most of us farmers talk to each other and kind of tell each other what we're seeing. So it's interesting. I'd like to know where some of them went.
I want to compare it because I kind of know we have this place. It's a pasture. It's not that big of a property. It's kind of in between two ags. I'm gonna say 30 to 40 acres max, and it's just an old pasture, growed up pasture that they actually don't even mow it anymore. So it's a great
Prime,
bedding area,
prime.
and all summer long, we get pictures of absolute mega giants. Become the second week of September, they're
Yep.
gone, and they
That's
don't
what
come.
ours.
Most of them don't even come back.
Yeah, that's ours too. And now that I'm getting a little more into some of the habitat stuff, I understand it a little bit more. Like they say, a lot of people say that they want that breeze. They want that air movement in the summertime. They don't want that thick cover that they want, and they don't want to beat up their velvet. Makes
Mm-hmm.
sense to me. I wouldn't want, sensitive and stuff. So I
Right.
kind of understand why they do that shift. And that's kind of what I've seen from my property. One section of it that's ridiculously mature forest, for a small ribbon that needs to be cleaned out. And they're in there all the way up until the second week of September, third week of September, and then they're gone. Once that velvet's getting ready to come off, I think that's when they start transitioning back to that thicker cover.
Now, do you think the rotation of crops has any influence on any of that?
Definitely. Yeah. That's one of the key things that I started noticing as a kid, hunting these ag grounds and being frustrated as heck of why am I always seeing them 100 yards over there when they used to be right on top of me and I had everything figured out. And then I started noticing, the change in the fields and or the crop rotations. Definitely how they use the corn to get from place to place changes, how they do that for sure. Agree. Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah, this certain place I'm talking about. This year it was surrounded by beans, and this one certain corner of it. I mean, we had him in there every day for several weeks at a time. Here and there, he'd be gone a little bit, but now with it being basically surrounded by corn, so you're talking about an overgrown pasture, 40 acres.
Oh,
Now it's going to be surrounded by corn, east and west, and a little bit and north, really. But south, it borders a big. I wouldn't say a big set of woods. We'll say 50 acres ish. It's you know how Indiana is. You have spots of land here and there, and it's all kind of
yep.
spread out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of in the middle of nothing. But you also have like a block to the east that's like 200 acres probably plus, and then on the other side, the west side, also another big chunk of woods. So we thought it might just been like a travel destination a little bit with these bucks, but the way we seen them, it's, like I said, it's a switch, man. But I'm thinking with the last time that it was surrounded by corn, we had those bucks would stay in there longer, and we didn't necessarily have them in the summer. It was more of a fall spot for them, which I'm super pumped about because this deer might hit around the 165, 170 range. I mean, he's an absolute giant.
That's a beast. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Something like that. That's got me just drooling thinking about it.
Right.
That prime setup, in my area. Yeah, that's money right there. For
Yeah.
sure.
So you talked about hunting your private. Do you ever get out and hit any public anywhere?
It's been a long time. Did when I was younger a couple of times, had some bad experiences, but you always come back to the farm. It's always drawing you, the not having to fight people, kind of understanding what's going on. Of course, a little bit less pressure deer. You're spoiled. I'll be the first to admit it. I am damn fortunate, damn spoiled to have what I got. And I'm very, very thankful for it, though. But yeah, pretty much just private, man. Give some other people some more ground. There ain't no reason for me to be an internet hero on the public, hashtag public land.
Right.
Have at it. That's awesome. Some dudes are some seriously good hunters that are doing that stuff, and that's awesome. But just not my game right now. No.
And I'm the same way. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of public or private property to be able to hunt on, and you just get that sense of relaxation. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to worry about somebody coming in and ruining your hunt or this or that. Now, don't get me wrong. We did a public land trip to Ohio this past year, and I kind of have some horror stories from it. You know what I mean? And it pushed me away. It pushes me away from the public land game, which I still want to do it. I really do. I love checking out new places, and it's always exciting to hunt something new. You know what I mean? Like you go check, a place you've never been before, and you
Yeah.
you hike back in there and get set up on maybe you did some scouting and checking it out. You get excited because you don't know what could happen.
Absolutely. No, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll talk a little bit about deer management on your farm. I know you're probably shooting, waiting for the 3 year olds and all that. And do you have like an antler restriction that you're kind of going with? Like it's got to be over 130, or you just shooting mature deer?
Yeah. No, I mean, well, like I said, we started QDMA way back in the day of just if it's 8 points and about the size of its ears or outside of its ears, that was good. And then my brother shot that big one, and that kind of changed our standards where we were like, okay, we got to let some of these ones go because we've shot a bunch of, all of us have shot a handful of them. There's no reason to shoot the same 8 point every single year in a row. We got plenty of doe to shoot. So then we started getting into that age class where we were really looking more for getting to that 3.5-year-old mark and seeing the jumps that they made, between that 3.5 and 4.5. And that's really when it started kicking off of, all right, we're letting a lot of deer go. We're getting to the age class, and now it's habitat stuff and getting that kind of stuff going. So here on my farm that I control now, everything that I control over here, 130 minimum for me. That's not to say if I actually got a 9.5-year-old that's not even close to 130 inches, but he was 9.5 in Michigan, and that was by a teeth actual cut, not by the wear indicator. That came back inconclusive. So that's when I sent it in to have it done. And I just was amazed because this deer was huge. I think it was 217 pounds dressed.
Dang.
For my area in Michigan, that's a big body deer, and so the age is definitely going to be a factor of it too. If there's a big deer and it's not 130 inches, that doesn't matter. It's a mature deer. I'm happy with that. That's an old wise deer.
Yeah, definitely. So what are you looking at an average 3.5, 4.5-year-old body wise in Michigan where you're at?
3.5. You're probably right there. Dressed that 180s, 200. Something around that range. You know what I mean? But they can get bigger. Don't get me wrong. By no stretch of the imagination was he the biggest deer ever around here. They can get much bigger than that, but most of them are somewhere around that mark. So.
That's awesome. So do you guys like put together a shooter list every year, or is it just something that you just go by and you know that there's a couple bucks in there or maybe in there that are big enough to pull the trigger on?
Yeah, I definitely do enough trail cam reconnaissance and stuff to think that I have a decent idea of what's out there, and of course I'll come up with some shooters because why shoot a 130 if I know there's 3 or 4 140 pluses out there? That's where I'm lucky enough to have that option. But definitely I don't get into the whole like naming game too much unless something's like super unique and I know that without a doubt like that's him or something. Or if I got a ton of experience and history with him, I might give him a little nickname just because he's pulled the slip on me so many times that I'm almost a little jaded at that point, so I got to name it. But yeah, I definitely like to establish at least some kind of an idea of my list or my goals to go after that year.
Absolutely. I get into the naming thing. I think it's
Yeah,
fun, and
yeah,
it's cool too. Like if say he throws a kicker off a couple kickers off his G2 or something like that, and then you have to try to is that the same deer as last year? Like I don't know, like sometimes they're just so unique that if it's him or not, but sometimes you may not really know. You know what I mean?
yeah. See, that's my area is just insanely typical. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have their differences like every deer does, but they are clean, straight, normally tall, wide, just real nice typical deer. You get your oddballs here and there, and I've been seeing a few more, but it's hard when I got 4 that are really nice 8 points. It's like, what do I call this many 8? I don't know.
Right.
I just never really got too much into that whole naming thing, but that just shows, everybody takes it a little bit differently and enjoys each side of it a little bit different.
Yeah, I think it's cool to name him because, you just get that backstory with him, and then you're chasing him for multiple years. Like we had this one, and honestly, I haven't seen this deer since like 2020 season, and we named him Mike Tyson. He was an absolute stud, and when I say that, he was just a unit. Like he was probably around the 180 mark, but his body, I mean, he looked like he was 250 plus on the hoof. I mean, when he walked in on the trail cam photos, you were just like take your breath away. You're like, oh my god, look at that body on that thing.
Yeah.
And he'd come in hitting scrapes and everything, and it was just But I haven't seen him in 2 years, so I don't. I would have known if somebody killed this deer because, like you said, you have the neighbors that you hunt around and stuff like that. I would have known if somebody killed this deer. I don't know if he's just literally putting the slip on me that much, or he's just completely gone and miles away from me.
Yeah, never know. Dead in a swamp. Unfortunately, something could have happened too.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
had.
it's funny you say that about naming. That's actually one of the reasons why I don't name them. So I had this buck. I called him Dagger 9. I knew him as a 3.5-year-old. Well, then he showed up as a 4.5-year-old as a 10 with just an insanely tall brow. and he's mounted actually right up over the corner here. And I knew that deer like no other deer I've ever seen before. Like he was so patternable. It was just ridiculous how I knew where he was going to be. It was just to the point where it was unfair. Once I got out there, sat up, and shot this deer when I called it like Babe Ruth. And when I got him over, I remember just like my buddy's like, "Oh man, you got him, ends the story." And I'm like, "Yeah, it ends the story." Like it just felt empty. I don't know why. And from that point on, it felt a little too personal. I don't know why. It's just me. It just felt too personal for me. So I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna try to target a specific deer with a specific name. That was just, it took a little bit of the joy of what I like to do with the hunting out of it for me personally.
Yeah. I liked when you were on Adam's show and you talked about big bucks having different personalities,
Yeah.
just like people do. Talk a little bit about that because you do a great job talking about that.
Yeah, definitely. I will say that is one thing I came to learn pretty early on, is that every deer is so different. And I'm pretty active in a tree stand. I like to call. I have had a ton of success calling. And I do it when the conditions I think are right. And I have watched deer, long enough to get their reactions, and it's amazing to see how some of them are like, "Oh, hell no, you're in my territory. I'm coming in," and they're bristled up. You see them stiff legs, and then you see other ones that, even though they may be the oldest deer in the area, instantly shy up and tuck tail and bail. And I don't, I really don't think it's something like I'm over calling or I'm calling too loud, because of the specific sequence that I like to use has worked so much and not spooked other deer. You know what I mean? It just seems like they get a negative reaction out of that particular call, or, hey, there's another big buck over there, I don't feel like fighting him today, or whatever is going on. Definitely think they have different personalities. Some of them, like I said, this 10 that I got was like Hollywood, man. Like that should have what I should have named him if I named him something, because he was in front of every camera all the time, and it was just unbelievable. And then I have other deer where I'm get one picture of, and it's like, how do you escape every trail camera other than that? And just so loner, that deer, that big buck that just won't go next to groups until he has to. So it
Just
definitely,
antisocial until the mood hits him right.
yep. And everything has to line up perfect. You see those guys like Adam Hayes, who's hunting these 6.5, 7.5, just giant mythical animals to me. And they know there's only 1 or 2 days of the year that deer might do what you need it to do. So
Yeah, they're big on the moon phases. Adam Hayes and what is it, Team 200 or whatever it's called.
yeah, I'm not
And
sure.
yeah, but going to that, kind of that subject, do you believe in moon phases when it comes to deer movement?
So this one is six in one hand, half a dozen in the other for me. I don't believe that it makes deer move more. I think it does change their movement times. Like a full moon, I do
Right.
believe that they stay out in fields a little bit longer at times, because that it's brighter. And they can see a little bit farther through fields, so it brings them back to bed a little bit later or earlier. Sometimes it's even earlier. If it's too bright, they're in bed an hour before daylight, and then that transitions to the evening, where they might be coming out that little bit earlier, that 15 minutes that you need. They come out because that full moon has put them to bed early. So yeah, I definitely believe it does shift their times some. I'm not gonna say it's like this myth that, like they say, that red moon, you got to be out.
Yeah.
That's gonna bring every deer on every. I don't know. I've never saw that kind of correlation, but I definitely have said that I've seen the full moon affect when they go to bed in the morning and when they come out at night, just because it throws their balance off that 20 minutes or whatever it might be, 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've always wanted to maybe try it, because I think it's a thing you have to subscribe to be able to get that
Oh,
information. But I would like to know when it is. Just try it out 1 year, just to
yeah.
see how if that correlates, because it's like a timestamp. It's like a
Yes.
day, a time, and
Yep.
everything. And the dude shoots big bucks. I don't know how if that correlates with it or not, but it obviously would get somebody curious on the
Yeah.
subject if he's shooting that many deer that big. You know what I mean?
Yeah, again, it's hard to argue with success, right? I mean, it may not be something, but to him, he's seen a trend, he's seen a pattern, he's seen something in his journaling that has led him to that, and he fully commits and believes in that.
Absolutely.
So
So we've talked a little bit about your shooter list and deer management, and you're we obviously do that a lot through trail cams. What kind of trail cams are you running? I mean, how many you got out there?
you know, I think a few more dropped off this year, so I think I've only got 4 or 5 now that I run, and truthfully, they're all mutts except for the Tacticam reveals. I
Right.
love the Tacticam reveal X's. I
Hmm.
only have 2 of them, but I put them in key places that I just don't want to go into, and bother them. That's all I
Right.
really use them for. Um, but yeah, I got some cutty backs. I got some muddies. I've had the gamut. I seem to go through them every year or two is all they last. So
Right.
I don't spend a ton of money on them, but I don't mind having at least a few SD card ones where I can get to them real easy on field edges and stuff like that. Low intrusion spots. I'll grab some cheaper cameras just to kind of do some reconnaissance. But I do really enjoy watching those cell cams all summer, soaking in swamps and stuff like that. That's been a lot of fun, just seeing the interactions, over mock vines and stuff like that. It's
Hmm.
it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So when it comes to placing a camera, say one that like the ones that send it to your phone, are you putting that in like near a bedding area or something that you're not going to go in and mess with that much?
Yeah, normally it's right there on the very fringes of those bedding areas, and then a few. One of them I put on a mock vine that I have is not far from one of my archery stands. It's right up tight to the big main bedding right there, and that's a ton of fun. That draws deer 365, just all kinds of cool activity right there. So that's a fun spot to put a trail camera. Um, yeah, but normally that cell phone one, I'll put in pretty deep into something. Just get in there real quick when it's raining, something, crazy wind where I can slip in there and get it on some kind of major trail coming in and out of my swamp, and just let it soak. I like to put them up 6.5 feet or so, pointing them down. I do like them above their eye level, and seem to not notice them as much.
Yeah. This was my second year, I believe, with the cell cams, and it wasn't bad. We had a few problems with them early, and then I think I had two that I paid for throughout the year, and time November was over with, December hit, I pretty much killed those subscriptions because I didn't really need it anymore because I get like 200 pictures a month for free or something
Yeah.
like that. But I actually don't actually have any more cameras out right now. But I love going in and checking the SD cards. I don't like doing it like super often. Maybe once a month or something like that. During the summer, if we're throwing a little something out there for them just to see what's hitting it, or like I was telling you, the summer range that we got. It's almost really fun to go check those because we really don't know what's ever going to be in there.
Oh yeah, that's definitely one of the joys of anticipation of seeing what's on that card. That's definitely still a fun part of it for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about journaling because I know that you're big into it and I'm big into
Yeah.
it. So how did the journaling thing start for you?
Yeah, so kind of to roll back to that opening day tradition, my grandpa was really adamant about taking Polaroid pictures of people that shot deer and brought them to the butcher shop, as we called it, and we'd weigh them. We'd put the date, where they were shot at, just basic information. And so that's how it kind of started. Where I was always, in there looking at pictures and reminiscing, and then noticing certain dates and certain tree stands were lining up. So it really started as try to find that hot spot where's the ticket spot that I need to sit at, and just kind of going through, and then it got a little more intricate on how we were doing the journaling, how what information we were putting down. And I started noticing just some random trends of some things, the pressure, temperatures, that kind of stuff, and started to kind of link things together of when were opportune times to get into certain places. So I just started slowly documenting pretty much every one of my hunts. I mean, of course, I miss a few here and there,
Hmm.
but early on, it was a little pad of paper, writing stuff down, basic information, just like wind direction, wind speed, where I was sitting, just basic stuff, barometric pressure. Started linking those together again. The barometric pressure for sure, 30, 31 inches. I like that number. If I see it
Oh
anywhere in
yeah.
there and rising, I'm going to be out there. I don't care if it's 70 or if it's -5. I'll be
Right.
out there hunting. And so then it just took it to a whole new level when I started noticing those things of where they were hitting certain beans at the time of year. This one little valley held water for a little bit longer, so those beans would stay greener longer. So I'd write that information down and start patterning how they were moving and what they were using. And then as I got a little older, college or something like that, maybe after, I don't know, whatever it was, started really getting detailed. That was when I was starting to mark how many deer I was seeing, where they were coming from, where they were going to, how long they were hanging around, all that kind of stuff. So that way I could start figuring out how they were using certain areas of the property with certain winds. That way I could ambush them. So it just, and I still do it to this day. I use my cell phone. I use, whatever I can get in front of me, like that note section in the iPhones. I use
Yes.
that a lot. I'll just have it open and I'll just pull it out of my pocket after deer walk by and throw in my quick notes. I'll screenshot, the Weather Channel or something like that, just to give me information, so I can take it home if I need to and record it that way. I don't take the pen and paper out with me as much as I used to. Just starting to dabble in the self-filming some. So, just one thing that I don't need to bring up there with me, really.
I
So,
actually downloaded like a journaling app on my iPhone, and that's kind of how I was doing it. But I think for me, it was more like an end of the year review type of thing. Like obviously, everything that you said as far as what I'm putting in there is about the same: cloud cover, barometric pressure, wind direction, where I saw the deer to where they went, or something like that. Everything that you can possibly write down, I did, and I did miss a few days too. But I wanted to be able to go back to that, especially on some of these properties that maybe we just picked up. You
mm-hmm.
know, and
Yeah.
getting to know those properties in a more a real anal way. You know what I mean? Like you're really getting down to the nitty gritty when you start going through all that stuff. And I can't remember exactly what podcast it was that I was listening to, but they had this old timer on there, and he talked about an east wind. Obviously, that's something that where I'm at, we don't normally get that much.
2 or 3 times a year.
Yep, and
Yeah.
he said if it's an east wind, I know exactly where I'm going, and I can almost, like you said, I'm Babe Ruth in it. I'll tell you which deer I'm going to kill. And
Yeah.
this guy had killed like it was something crazy, like 10 years in a row, almost pretty much a few days apart, and with an east wind. And,
And
and that's just crazy to me because this year that happened to me. I didn't realize it until I went back and read what I had typed up for the day. But I killed my buck this year on an east wind. He wasn't a giant by any means, but I happened to get it done on an east wind, and I saw a ton of deer that day in that particular location. So I think if I ever get an east wind, I might just go back to that property because I know exactly where they're going to funnel through at.
I think I may have heard that same podcast because I remember hearing stories, similar to that. I know that I've shot two of mine on east winds, um, and there was one out of one stand multiple years apart, but set up specifically for an east wind for those 2 or 3 times that you may get a chance. And I can't remember. Somebody else was talking about it, and they said I will take off a day of work
Yeah.
as soon as I see the east wind. That day's off. I'm taking it off. I'm going hunting.
That's
I'm like,
awesome. I think I may have heard. I don't know what podcast that was, but I've heard that same story before.
mm-hmm.
So, with the journaling thing, what about like advantages and disadvantages to journaling? What disadvantages do you think that it has?
I would definitely say it's time consuming. You can get caught up in it. At least I did. I
Yeah.
know for a few times it was like, oh, here it is. Everything I've ever said is trends, and everything I've ever said is going to work out. Everything's lining up on this day. It's going down, and just getting that confidence, arrogance, really, truthfully, that it's going to
Right.
happen. And you get up there and just skunk it up, and that can be very, humbling and teach you. Okay,
Yeah.
I had a few of those events, and it was like they're still wild animals, dude. It don't matter what you think, what you
Yeah.
say, what you see. There are variables outside of you plus the deer that just don't make this happen. You can't think like that, and
Yeah.
and but at the same time, if you're as analytical as I am when it comes to deer hunting, there I have true beliefs in some trends and things that I see around my property of how they're going to use my property based off of wind direction. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how they're going to crisscross back across a field, or what tree lines they're going to use to get from A to B because of the wind direction. And that's what I use to set up. And sometimes I play some sketchy winds,
Oh yeah.
you know, of what people would think are sketchy winds, but I know how they're going to use the area in that method, and I'll flirt with disaster because I might be 10 or 15 feet off on the wind, and they'll just barely slip in and not catch me. So, you know, sometimes it helps you play that it's not perfect wind, but I know I can really got a 95% chance instead of having that wind perfect. You get more days out of being able to hunt, you know, weekends and stuff. Try to get as much opportunity as you can in those stands. So sometimes if I can risk it a little bit, I'm gonna try to risk it.
Absolutely. So what's an ideal wind for hunting your farm?
All of them.
I like that
And,
answer. I like that
and
answer.
truthfully, that's what I've tried to do is I've set up so many tree stands that I have somewhere to go. Now, mind you, they may not all be my, you know, bread and butter hot spots, prime spots, but there's somewhere I can go and see deer, watch deer, learn something from the deer, and not educate the deer. You know, so that's what I kind of use some of those stands as. Is it might not be that perfect one that I'd really like to be at today. I'd really like to, but I just know the wind is too far off, and I'd go to a different one and use it for some kind of education and just getting out in the woods. Obviously, just the peace.
Oh yeah. You talked about, the winds, and sometimes you just went after it anyways. I can remember one of our hunts that we had. It was actually our opening day of bow season. So that pasture I was telling you about, we hunted it opening day, and we don't need a north wind. If the wind's blowing to the north, it's basically blowing our scent directly to where we think these deer are going to come out of. And I think we were just ready to go. It was opening day, and we wanted to hunt that spot because we had seen that big one there not
Yeah.
long before that. So we decided to just go with it because we're big in the scent game, so we play that sort of thing. And we saw a ton of deer that day, and they walked directly underneath us. Like it somehow played out. I don't know if it
Yep.
swirled a little bit, but the one thing that we had on our side, and I've heard you talk about it before, they were cutting the beans that day. So like the combines were running, they're running, 60, 70 yards from the combine. They don't care.
Yep.
They're used
Nope.
to the farm equipment, and I think that really helped us on that wind direction that day. He had stirring the dust up and the dirt and picking the beans. Had a lot of stuff flying around. So I don't know if that maybe made them all move that night, but we saw a ton of deer.
Oh, they're dinner bells. Absolutely, absolutely dinner bells. You know, when they hear them combines fire up, if they're not in the field while you're cutting, they're sitting on the edge waiting for you to leave, and they're there. You know, but they don't care about that equipment as long as it's moving. They're not worried about it. They stop it. They might think about it, but you get out of it, and they're out. You know, they've learned.
Have you ever been in the combine and saw deer when maybe you had the chance to go hunting?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Many times.
Is that a
Yeah.
frustrating feeling?
Not, you know, it's one of those things that you just say, hey,
Part
it
of
is
it.
what it is at that point. You know, I don't get too bent out of shape out of it. You got to do what you got to do too. So,
Right. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing on these farms, the type of work that you're doing. Where you start off, in the off season with working on these farms.
you know, off season is a ton of scouting. I love to be out there walking. You know, I shed hunt, but I'm not great at it. You know, you can see a
Me
few of them
either.
I found, but I don't find a ton every year. I don't make it a huge priority. I'll look for the first hour, and then it turns into a scouting mission anyways. So I just try to use the off season as a scouting, and then looking at canopies if I can cut. You know, on this farm is one of the first places that I can really, you know, open up and use my own kind of thing without having to worry about anything. So it's going to be a ton of fun. I'll hopefully document some of this as I go, my successes and failures. But right now I'm planning out what I want to do. Some of this is 5 years down the road because I am looking to actually reclaim all of the farm ground on my particular farm and turn it into whitetail, pheasant, squirrel, rabbit, you know, all kinds of habitat. So stages of planning every single off season, looking for any kind of little improvements you can do. You know, farm ground, obviously most farmers are not going to give up their tillable ground for you to plant food plots. They don't like the deer, most of them. So
Right.
make do with what you can and get some food plots in. That's a big one.
Well, talk about like the work that you've put into it already. You talking like hinge cutting, or planting a certain thing to create bedding? Where did you start out at?
So I started out actually with, it was like a 40-acre grass field and just didn't hold deer. They'd pass through it, but would not hold them. So I started propagating red osier dogwood and silky dogwoods, knowing that it was lower ground, couldn't get on it with tractors, but I wanted some kind of cover and just notice an explosion in deer. The red osier, they love it. They will browse the heck out of that stuff. The silky dogwood, they don't eat so much, but it's just really good cover because it grows quick. It grows relatively thick to break, your outlines up, or at least make them think that they're in good cover. So I started just propagating that and trying to make that field useful, and then transitioned into a buddies and started just going haywire with all kinds of cool stuff. At the time we obviously made some mistakes with how we were hunting food plots, making food plots just, in my opinion, too big, having a couple acres of stuff for our area. Just isn't real useful to have them that big. And then now I'm planning on, not really doing any hinge cutting on my property. It needs more of a canopy opening. So I'm having a slet cut come through and some more timber taken off just to open that canopy up and really thicken that up, get the native vegetation going, get a ton of browse, and then certain pockets. And that's what I'm hoping for, is to create bedding areas. The south sides of a couple of hills, I have some real nice white oaks. Even though most people would frown on me taking some white oaks out, I got so many of them. The couple of them taken out will open that canopy up so much to give so much more native browse underneath that it's going to create just a fantastic bedding area. So that's one of my goals this winter. Hopefully here in the next week or two, the harvest company will be out cutting that lumber. And then propagating some red osier. I have a few spots that are low bottom, and I'm going to go and take a whole bunch of cuttings. Cuttings, I like to have them about a pencil thick and 18, 24 inches long. And I cut them on like a 45, so it makes it a stake that you can stick in the ground,
Mm-hmm.
carry some root hormone with me. And I just take a whole bunch of them and just stick them in the ground all over the place. And the deer will browse the heck out of them. So you got to kind of overwhelm them with numbers, but that stuff is phenomenal. Anyone in the northern belt that has red osier around, get on it. It's super easy to propagate, awesome in areas that normally aren't really useful for a whole lot more. You can make some cool browse plots, real cool browse plots. They'll hang in there before they get to the ag land, release out to the ag land, so you can have more edges to hunt. Works
That's
well.
that's awesome. I know you talked a little bit about like having a lot of like marshy areas. How do you set up on those marshy areas, or what do you do with the marshy areas?
Same. You just try to find a tree or two that you can get into and see what you can do out of those trees if possible. Um, that's what I really tried to do, because our marsh areas are pretty open. They're not really timbered or much of stand locations. So I try to create those as my holding areas that I don't really go into, that I don't really mess. That's where it's going to hold them. And that's where that silky dogwood and that red osier dogwood has really come into a play for me, has created what never held deer, what never was good cover for deer, is now great holding and great cover. So they just kind of release from those pockets out to where I can actually get to them.
That's awesome. So it creates almost like a staging area for them almost before they hit the ag fields.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
I mean, a
awesome.
few of them, I've got some box blinds, in some strategic places by like a willow. You might have seen it. I call it my hillbilly Hilton. It's two of those IBC totes, those, like big chemical containers or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
These ones were maple syrup in them, but I cut them, made a blind because I knew I couldn't get any equipment out in this marsh ground. I bought a big dog tripod, I think it is, one of them like Menard special 16 footers, and put this sucker on the top of it. And it is sweet. You look out over that whole marsh, that's just red osier and pockets of brush, and they just move in and out of those brush pockets pretty much all day long. And then, of course, I have the complements of the ag. So at night, I know they're going to work out of those brush pockets from pocket to pocket where I can see them, and then give me good shots as they're going to the ag.
That's awesome. So your food plots, you talked a little bit about the food plots. What are you planning, and how are you setting up these food plots?
I like to have my plots either long and narrow, or if it's a block with like some kind of divider, in it, like say switchgrass or even a fence. I've seen people use fences. I have not used a fence myself, but in theory it would work. I like to put them on an angle to kind of pinch down that field so that you can set up where that pinch down is, because they're going to naturally want to come around that and check out the other side of the field and stuff. If it's a big open plot, but I really like to have them kind of narrow and long, so that way when they get into the food plot, they really want to go the length of those plots. They'll kind of travel, so that gives you a couple little opportunities to ambush them. Even if they pop out 100 yards away from you, they still have a pretty good chance of coming down right towards you.
Yeah. So what exactly are you planning for your food plots?
It's a mix. I like to do a bunch of different things. I do like to do like the crop rotation, I guess, if you will. So brassicas, all types of brassicas, tillage radish. I'm a little heavier on the tillage radish, very light on the Essex rape. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
and some purple top. Throw some purple top in there too. That's generally my mix for when I do brassicas. And then on the opposite year of that, I'll do winter rye. I really like to do winter rye, and then if I can get some peas in there, I'll try to get some peas in there too. And that winter rye is, really good stuff. You don't have to work the ground much. You don't have to get it opened up. Just get it on that soil, and it'll most of the time it'll grow pretty well.
When do you think they hit those turnips the best?
So, there's multiple times for sure. Your prime time is anytime when they're young. When they start sprouting leaves, you'll see them nipped off. And as they grow up, they'll be eating those leaves quite a bit. But once they start to yellow at all, it seems like they don't touch them at all. Once they're starting to rot and die down, they won't touch them at all until it seems to be pretty hard freeze. And then they come back and just destroy anything they can see above the ground. Just
Right.
destroy them.
Yeah, we kind of ventured into the food plot thing last year. Didn't nothing big. We kind of wanted to try like a micro plot, like literally it wasn't that big at all. And we just hit it with like some rakes and raked it up. Did like a throw and grow type of thing. It had brassicas and some ryegrass and clover and that kind of stuff in it. But they mowed it over like right off the bat, like early October. That stuff was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, a little too small probably, for the amount of deer that were there. And that's the one downside about that is it can get mowed and you think your all hopes are lost. But one thing I would warn a few people on, winter rye compared to rye grass
Mm-hmm.
is a big difference. Winter rye is a much heavier attractant for the stage, a small stage, and you can go over it and keep putting it on every 2 or 3 weeks and just go back over and spread some more and spread some more, spread some more. So as they mow that down, you can go in there, pretty regularly and add some to it, and they'll just keep on coming.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good
Uh,
stuff.
what's a tip for somebody, getting into the stuff that like what you're talking about, creating bedding and, hinge cutting and just management period. What's some tips for somebody that's maybe never done that before and they want to start doing that sort of thing?
Um, I would say for habitat, first you got to know your property pretty well and do some research, because you can hurt yourself. You can open up some woods and cause some problems. Do a little research. The time ahead definitely makes a big difference on what you want to do, but don't be afraid to experiment. That's for sure, because hey, any kind of food source is better than no food source at all. Like you said, even though that was small and it was mowed down, them deer are still going to kind of come back there and check that out and see if there's anything left. So try it. You don't need to be pretty. It doesn't need to be Hollywood. I use some really crazy equipment and get very useful, crafty with some interesting equipment to get back to certain things, because I want to try to make every square footage I can make it work. So don't be afraid to just make something work. Pump sprayers, hand, it will help you. It will definitely be a benefit to have some type of food source there that's different from what's around it.
So say we want to try that micro plot again. Should we go in there like a couple weeks before we want to, hit it with the rakes and disc it up and stuff? Should we go in and spray it and kill off the weeds or grass or whatever's growing right there?
Yeah, so you definitely want to try to get some of it down, but I've actually had some good luck with broadcasting into that overburden, then spraying it, killing it off, and then coming back and weed whipping it down, a couple of days later or whatever, to put that thatch on top of that plant.
Mm-hmm.
on top of that seed, and that's actually worked really well, especially with like rye and even brassicas. That works pretty well for helping germination, holding some moisture onto that soil, definitely. So you don't want to whip that stuff down first, because then sometimes you can create a thatch where the seed can't get to the actual ground. So it's helpful to have some of that thatch to a point. You don't want to have 4 foot tall foxtail that you're mowing down on top of it. That's going to be too much thatch. So you have to kind of think of where you're going. You might have to go in there and mow it, prep it, spray it a few times first, and then do that same process to get it to go.
Yeah, we just hit it with some. We took our like electric weed eaters back there and hit it as much as we could. I think we ran like 4 batteries dead on the weed eaters trying to get it down because
Yeah.
they can't even get a tractor back in there right now. So it's like it was growed up. So it took us a couple hours to do that. We got hot and sweaty in July, but we were putting in the work, and I don't know if it's something we're going to do again this year. It was a trial thing, and they mowed it. I mean, they had like 3 or 4 different paths that just came into this area, and we had stands. We had a double set because we do a lot of filming, and it was right there. And like we got up into our stand on opening day, and we're looking down like, oh my God, you see all these like highways coming into this thing, but they had already mowed it all over. But the 3 or 4 bucks we saw that night came right down the fence line from the beans, jumped into where we were at, and was browsing through there. So there was still something there they were looking for.
Yep. Yeah, they were checking it. They knew it was there. So you established that pattern of use. And luckily, it had lasted long enough at least to get to the first part of the season. And that's where you can, really add on to that is you can still throw winter rye down that early in season. So you can still refresh and regenerate that, next year. And they'll keep on coming right into that. It sounds like you got a nice little spot there.
Yeah,
That
you might
good.
have just talked me into another year of it.
I would try it. I mean, and go heavy on that winter rye. Don't be afraid to go heavy. And same with winter wheat. You can put them both in on top of each other and relatively late in the year, obviously, because it'll germinate in pretty cold temperatures. So if you get some water on it, hammer down because they will be in there. If they're eating it like that, you got a good spot.
That's the good thing about it. This pasture, that's the same place I've been kind of talking about this whole episode, but there's a creek that actually runs. I mean, I wouldn't really even call it a creek. It's kind of like a drainage ditch that runs down through the middle of it. So I think it gets some pretty good water from it, and then obviously, it's all pretty much wide open. So when it rains and stuff, it's getting pretty good water on it, I think.
I wouldn't give up on it quite yet. I'd try that out. Sounds like you got it going. Just maybe make a little changes or add some more tonnage to it. It just sounds like you got a lot of deer that are on there, so need a little more tonnage.
Yeah, like we were talking earlier, you're learning places because this is only like the second year we've hunted it, and we've seen a pattern of them moving on the other side of this drainage ditch. So we're talking about setting a set of stands on that side of the drainage ditch too, because it happened to my buddy Ryan like 3 or 4 days in a row on that particular property where a buck hit the middle of that, and with the bow season that's like a 70-yard shot. So we were thinking about moving a set of stands over there, or I'm going to the saddle game this year. I don't know how many people I got on board with me in my camp on that deal, but even if not, we can still figure he could bring a hang on with him or whatever. It's always nice to have that hang on that you don't put up in the summer and just kind of keep it off to the side. You never know when you might need one. You know what I mean?
Yep, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about some gear. What kind of bow you shooting?
I shoot a Matthews Z7 Extreme. A little bit older bow.
Mm-hmm.
It drives tacks. It's been comfortable for me, and I'm one of them that I'm not worried about keeping up with the Joneses. I want confidence. You know what I mean? I'm so confident with it. It's been with me long enough. There's no reason to change on the bow. I do love that. I'm a lock on. Pretty much everything's lock on. Climbing sticks. I have thought about dabbling into the saddle game myself, just because the mobility seems just tremendous. If I need to make a move, that just sounds awesome. The whole part of that sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm with you on the bow thing. I think the model I have is actually like 1 or 2 older than yours. I got the Matthews Monster, and I've had it forever. And exactly what you're talking about, the comfortability, and I trust it so much. I know
Yeah.
exactly where I'm going to put that arrow, and even in, having, compensating for my angle, all that kind of thing. If they're
Yeah.
close, like that deer I shot this year is at 10 yards. Like
A lot of guys miss high.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I just drove it through there, and I'm just so comfortable with it. I don't know. I'm afraid to change when it comes to that stuff, and I don't know if I can pull the trigger on that yet.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're that confident and you're that comfortable with it, why make that change at that moment? Yeah, I don't blame you.
Right. So what about clothing? Is clothing a thing for you, or you just kind of like throw whatever on, like Walmart camo or whatever?
Yeah, I mean it's just the old school real tree. I think I bought it at Cabela's probably 15 years ago. It was just a pants and coat, nothing special, nothing crazy. I'm more of a layerer. I really like to do my base layers, multiple base layers,
Hmm.
but nothing fancy. I'm not, that Sitka guy or any of that kind of stuff. Um, just run on the mill kind of camo. It works for me, and haven't seen any negative sides of it.
Yeah.
It's like waterproof to an extent. If it gets real heavy rain, I get wet, but
Right.
it works.
Well, like you said, just like when you're talking about the bow, you're comfortable with that stuff. It's obviously worked for you for many, many years. Why change it up now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk about the Pope and Young stuff. Like I know you have multiple deer in Pope and Young. We'll talk about those bucks a little bit and how many you got.
I'm up to, I believe, six. Last year was number six in the Pope and Young. Um, just started out when I was younger. I got lucky to get on a pretty nice one and kept telling my brother I was on a nice one, and finally got a good shot. And actually, that's that one of the deer that started me on that particular call sequence that I talked to you about. With a grunt tube and a doe can, and he came in on a string and pegged him and was lucky enough to make it in. I think that was one. It was low 130s, upper 120s. Just a
Hmm.
beautiful 8 point for the area. A couple years later, wound up getting lucky enough to get into another one, just an absolute giant of an 8 point. I think it was 147 and 3/8.
That's nice.
Just a beautiful, beautiful 8 point for this area. Super tall, real nice buck, and that's the really what drove home for me of okay. I think I'm going to stick with this 130 kind of mark or Pope and Young. That's my number one goal every year. I want to stick a true Pope and Young with my bow. Um, and I just was drawn to the Pope and Young Record Book Club because of who they are, what they stood for, their values, and that's kind of what I also, kind of have them same values. And I was just surprised at how enamored I got by the scoring. I loved it. I loved the whole process. I love the
Me too.
record keeping. And for me, it's not oh, look at the side. I got a buck 2 inches bigger than yours.
Right.
To me, it has nothing to do with any of that. No, dick measuring competitions or none of that.
Right.
Not worried about that kind of stuff. For me, it's just the record keeping because again, it kind of transitions into that journaling. It's all record keeping, and just kind of not letting the hunt end at the end of the hunt or the taxidermy, but allowing more of that to continue to give the animal some more credit, to spend some more time with it. And I love it. I love that whole process. So that's
Yeah.
my number one goal every year. Try to go back and see Jim. That's my measurer.
That's awesome. I haven't got, for obviously, for bow, it's 125. I
Yep.
think it's 125, even for our Indiana book, and 140 with the gun. Um, I'm shooting for that. I want that record book so bad, and people call me crazy all the time. And it's not like you said; it's not a dick measuring contest.
Yeah.
It's a personal goal that it's something
Yes.
I want to do because I put so much time and effort into this that it's something that I want to measure my success by. You know what I mean? Like you said, you get that paper back from him measuring it, and then you keep a stack of them or put them in a plaque or whatever you do with them, and then when somebody asks about that deer, well check this out, you pull the paper out, look, his main beam measured this, his deductions were this or whatever. It's always cool to talk about, you know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah, agreed. That's one of the things that I do actually with mine is I put the score sheet in a picture frame. Generally, with if some of them I did not go to, but Michigan has a successful hunter patch.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go and get it checked in and get that successful hunter's patch, and I'll put that in that frame. Generally, the tag that I shot the deer with goes in that frame, and it's just another a picture. I also put a picture of the deer, like me, trophy shots, whatever you want to call them. I like to have my animals cleaned up real well and get a really nice quality picture with them, and that kind of goes with the deer too. So it's a story. When you look at it, it tells a story. And every time I walk in, I relive those moments every single time I look at them. And that's why I do it. It's for me.
Oh,
I'll be,
absolutely.
selfish. It's like, that was badass. That day was awesome.
Right.
That was a ton of fun. And I remember everything that led to it, the whole day, everything about it. And that's where it kind of went for me.
That's awesome. Well, you very early in this episode, you talked about that you hadn't got to travel to hunt yet. Is that something that you're working towards or want to set up?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've been applying for preference points for quite a while to Wyoming. Just even though I don't need a pile of them, we're doing the antelope and mule deer.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
that's going to be absolutely a ton of fun. I'm excited to do that. That's been on my bucket list forever. So, not venturing into the big game yet, but definitely want to get out and do, chase some elk. But I got a lot to learn before I get into that kind of stagey game. And the kids are young, so it doesn't really allow me to do a ton of traveling. But man, definitely seeing social media and listen to podcasts and stuff is like, oh, that sounds so fun to get out of town with a couple of guys and chase some whitetails or whatever it may be. So I'm looking forward to it. Not a ton of set in stone plans, but that Wyoming one is a set in stone. So
When you said preference points, I thought you were going to say Iowa. Because I'm getting ready to start into that venture myself. This will be my first year buying preference points for non-resident deer tag in the state of Iowa. Iowa and Kansas are like a big thing that I want to do at some point.
ooh,
You
yeah.
know, if I just want to get there. I want to be able to experience that firsthand. If it's public, it's public, and I go down that road. Or if it's an outfitter or whatever, I just want to experience those things. So many people talk about the deer hunting in Iowa, and I want to check it out for sure. It would get me pumped up just knowing that I'm getting to go to a place like that.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely sounds fun. But for me, honestly, if for the draw for me to travel is something that I can't get in my own state.
Right.
That's my draw. That's what I want to kind of chase after, is just something different. I've never seen a mule deer ever, other than in pictures.
Right.
So that'll be a total new experience right there, just to see one, let alone be able to possibly harvest one. So
Right.
yeah, that's my draw goal, is to get out and get something crazy.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Talk a little bit about the scent stuff. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but like how deep do you get into that? Are you spraying your clothes and washing your clothes and using wipes and all that kind of stuff, or is it something that you just kind of do every once in a while?
Nope, I'm not. I'm not buying into the scent spray stuff, the ozonics. I haven't bought into any of that stuff. I used to. Don't get me wrong. I was that guy. I always bought. I can't remember what brand, but it was Earth Scent. And I had to have Earth Scent, and I would just douse myself. I always grow my beard for hunt season, so I'd spray it on my face and my hands and everything. And then I started noticing deer not spooking, but definitely noticing something. Like when they would cut my path, obviously we all know they're going to catch something, but
Right.
they're not spooking when they catch it. So that means to me they're not catching human scent. They're catching something different. And I stopped using it, and I stopped seeming to have those issues. Don't get me wrong. Of course, they're going to bust you every now and then crossing through a footpath or whatever, but I stopped using the scent spray, all that kind of stuff, and now I just do the scentless wash. I do scentless wash, but I leave all my clothes outside 24/7. When it's before hunting season by a couple weeks, and then all through hunting season they're outside under a little canopy on one of my shops. And yeah, I don't do any of that scent spray stuff anymore. No.
You're like the third or fourth person that I've had on this podcast that shoot big deer consecutively that say they don't really play into the scent game.
Yeah,
I think I
you're
might
not
have to
fooling them.
follow you on that.
Yeah, you're not fooling them. And I watched the show a long time ago. I don't know who did it. I want to say Primos, but I could be wrong, where they did a dog challenge. And supposedly the dog, if I remember, I could be wrong. Somebody's going to correct me, I'm sure. I think the
Sure.
dog's nose is not as powerful as a deer. Is that Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't really remember. I know they're obviously their nose is number one, in defense system. So I would say they're
But
probably pretty close.
yeah, so they ran the dog test, and a dog's picking these people up, boom, 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 like nothing. And I'm going, wait a minute, this isn't selling the product for me. And then not too long ago, I think it was Seek One did it, and the same thing. That dog's picking them up, just boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, okay, I feel all right. You can't fool that dang deer. No scent warming your clothes up and the carbon clothes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't buy it. I play the wind, and like I've told you, I'm not afraid to risk it at times, but I'm not going to be stupid. I'm not going to dump it right over their bedding area, but I'll throw it just a little bit offside of one of the trails I know they're going to come in or something like that. But nope, wind is my number one. You're always going to have that crazy one that gets you. Comes
Right.
downwind. It's like, what are you doing down there? I don't worry
You
about it.
just said something about Seek One. Are you like a hunting channel type of guy, or are you more like a YouTube type of guy?
No, I'm a you type of guy, like the backwoods guys. I like to watch the dudes that are just out with the camcorders and
Right.
their GoPros and stuff like that. Really, I don't like I don't want to say I don't like. I just don't watch the bigger shows and stuff. The true hunting pros.
Right.
I like watching the average Joe getting out there after he just busted his ass from 9 to 5. That's
Yeah.
that's what I like to watch.
Me
Yeah.
too. And that's what
Mhm.
I try to put out as far as content when I do put videos on the YouTube.
Mhm.
I don't want to put videos on there, and I think I talked about this last episode actually. I don't want to put YouTube videos on there where it's me talking to the camera like 80% of the time. I want you to see action in there,
Yeah.
but it's you get that when you are talking to the camera, you're kind of telling them what you're doing, and they're getting to know you a little bit. Like, I just got off work, I'm dog tired, but here I am, and I'm gonna get it done tonight. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. I've had a lot of people ask me, just, what, even if it's terrible editing, throw some random thing out there just to kind of show me what you're doing. So I'm gonna try to dabble in that a little this year. Set up a tripod and film myself being dumb out there with hillbilly equipment if I got to. Just
Yeah.
just show people you can do it. You just got to have that gumption, that motivation to do it.
What kind of camera are you gonna roll with?
Oh, I just got a little Sony Handycam, like literally just $150. Just get in and videotape, and it started for me. I didn't videotape for the YouTube or any of that. I don't even put anything up on YouTube, but I started just to capture some of the stuff that I was maybe not writing down, and just to kind of review it, like you said, day in review. I can review a footage of deer or whatever and see how they're acting. So.
Hmm. Yeah, when I first started into it, and I'm not doing it to get famous or anything like that. I'm doing it purely out of a hobby, or
Yep.
and to put my stuff out there and have fun with it. But I can definitely see what you're saying on that.
Hmm.
So tell everybody where they can find you at on social media.
So I've got just the Instagram, JAB_outdoors. Real generic. That's me, your average guy, nothing special.
Well, yeah.
Just try to keep it outdoors as much as physically possible with what's going on and what I'm doing at that time of the. I'm not a post every day, post every 3 days, just here and there, kind of showing what's going on. And then YouTube, same thing, but I don't really have many videos on that yet. Hopefully, like I said, this summer I'll be trying to get into that a lot more and showing a little bit more of that side of it.
Yeah, well, if you ever need help on the YouTube side of thing, man, don't be afraid to text or call. I can definitely. I've went through my failures and stuff on that stuff too, so I could definitely help you out if you're having any troubles.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I'm not the most techie person, so that
I'm
I
not
might
either.
call on you.
I get lucky that I even get to publish this podcast because sometimes I can have troubles with it. Like my last episode, I had Adam Bonowitz on, great guy, and we got done with it. He was actually in studio. He's my neighbor, and we had some beers and stuff, and we got done with it. And the whole video aspect of it was just shot. The screen was black. I don't know what happened. I'm not the biggest tech guy either, but the audio version's still out there. So if you
Nice.
haven't checked out episode 20 yet, do it for sure because it's a
I'll
great
check that.
episode.
All right, I have not. I got a few more to get through of yours yet.
I appreciate the support, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on, man. I've had a blast talking to you, and I can't wait to get you back on, hopefully talking about some of these big deer you've been killing.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it so much. I really do appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, wouldn't mind diving into things a little more in detail and going through some stuff. And hopefully I do have some big ones show you and get
Yeah,
some
well, maybe
pictures
we
up.
can do
So.
like a midsummer or late summer episode where you can talk about what you've done, food plot wise, management wise. I can tell you about what little I've done on that side of things. But we could just, even food plots. That's a big topic at the end of summer. There, a lot of people looking for that content. So we should set that up for sure.
Yeah, no, that sounds good because this year I'm going to have a pretty nice little setup, I think, with some of the stuff I'm doing. So
That's
should be a
awesome.
good time.
Well, I appreciate anybody listening or watching on the YouTube, and check us out. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything anywhere you're listening to this. Hook us up with a review, and I appreciate everybody. Y'all have a good day.